Alrighty then. Here we go this morning. I am determined to make this a better morning than the mornings I have had, because those mornings are in the past. And that's all I've got to say about that. So, I watched an interesting movie last night that kind of sparked a bigger thought and bigger conversation. And it's funny because this isn't at all what the movie was about. It was just like an isolated little scene, and it blew up into something bigger. And that's oftentimes how a lot of my ideas, whether it be for stories or topics to talk to you all about, or whatever my ideas might be, they stem from like singular isolated events in a bigger story, if you will. Quentin Tarantino talks about this a lot, in how he'll watch a film or read a book or something, and there'll be one particular scene that he really, really likes, and then he decides to drill into that concept there and create an entire movie based of it or something of that nature. And I feel like I like to do the same thing, because like the most recent book that I wrote was based off of this character dynamic between these two characters from this show. And the show was actually quite lame, but this character dynamic was interesting. And I was like, you know what, I feel like if done right, this character dynamic could be pretty cool. And so that's what I did, is I wrote an entire book about that character dynamic and how those characters interact with each other. And I think it turned out to be a really cool book because of it. And it's just interesting how you can take something that was an otherwise small concept from one thing and blow it up into its own whole thing. And that's kind of what gets us to where we are here. I was watching a movie. I've been on this 80s movie kick. I watched St. Elmo's Fire on Saturday, and I watched, I think it's called like Wild Horses or something, on Sunday. And the movie has nothing to do with this, but at some point in time in the story, because the characters are like college aged, and I even feel like the phrase or the terminology that this person uses isn't really even fair for college-age people. But he says that, talking to his friend, he's like, for men our age, it's hard to find friends and to make friends. And when you get one, you find someone that you like, that you cherish and value as a friend, you tend to do some crazy stuff to keep them around. And I really think that statement, at least mostly the first part, is very true. And I feel like, and maybe this is just because it's something that I pay attention to, but I feel like I am starting to see more videos on the concept. But, and I don't think this is exclusive to males. I think it's less talked about with males than it is with females. But this idea that once you become an adult, it is much harder to make new friends. And it feels like you get to a certain point in your life where the friends you have are the friends you have, and that's kind of the end of things. And I've explored many of theories on why this is or what happens, and like naturally people's lives progress, and you settle down and you get married and you have a family, like perhaps you are less likely to make new friends just because you have other obligations. But it is important to note that like friendship is different within a relationship. And I think that is plain enough on the outside, but it's not emphasized properly, because there are things that you might share with a friend that you might not share with a spouse. And that maybe sounds unhealthy because you want to share everything with your spouse, but like, there are some things that you would rather other people not know about you. It's just the same with spouses to friends. There are things that you will share with your spouse that you will never share with your friends. And it's important to have a healthy balance of both of those kinds of relationships in your life. But a lot of people just lean towards the spouse, and they let the spouse do all of the work in both departments. And that works in some cases, but I feel like it's better to do it other ways. And it's interesting because I look at other adult males around my age and like the friend situation that they're in, and I do know plenty of adults around my age, older, maybe a little bit younger even, who have depravity of friendship, if that's the right word and the right context in which to use it. They don't have very many friends, and some of them are totally okay with that, and others not so much. And well, I mean, I shouldn't say not so much. If they're not okay with it, they certainly don't make it obviously known. But like me, for myself personally, if I ever found myself in a place where I did not have a decent amount of friends, that would really kind of suck. But I'm fortunate that I haven't really had that issue. I will say that I had a problem in 2021 when I realized I was having problems making new friends. And so like I had the same old friends that I'd been hanging out with forever, but a lot of them, for one reason or another, you just lose touch, or you go through a spat where you're not talking for a little while. Not a spat, that makes it sound like we were arguing. It's just we have different competing priorities in life, and so we're not constantly speaking to one another. But that all kind of turns on its head when you start looking at friendship under a deeper light. And so in 2021, I went through a phase where I was not making any new friends. I was just stuck in the group that I had, and the group that I had were all doing other things, so I really didn't have a lot of people to talk to or to talk about. And that's one of the better things about the internet. One of the things that I will always accredit the internet to helping is bringing people together. And through Xbox and through the internet, I have met a healthy dose of otherwise random people who have turned into like really good friends of mine. And so like at a time, and I say that the game Evil Dead had a lot to do with this, but maybe it was a combination of just where I was in life and the game itself. Because I can remember in 2021, that's when I got my first promotion, and a lot of the friends that I was making at the time were work friends, and I couldn't really do that anymore because I was a member of leadership. So unless I was befriending other leaders, like it didn't feel right to befriend the staff who reported to me. And so as such, I was like, wow, this is the first year where I feel like I haven't made any new friends. And then Evil Dead came out, and quite the opposite happened. I made like a gajillion friends on there. I think I had like a total of like 12 people that I talked to regularly in that game. And now here we are 2 years later, and there's still at least 8 of them that I talk to pretty regularly. And so that feels pretty good. And it was at this time when I really needed friendship for whatever reason. I really wanted to make new friends, and I was able to do that through Xbox. But if you think about a time, because this movie that I watched came out in the 80s, you think about a time before the internet, like, how did one go out and make new friends? And I feel like that's a pretty potent dynamic that a lot of Gen Xers kind of ran into. Because once you got out of school and everybody kind of went their own ways, like, maybe you would meet friends at work, coworkers. But aside from that, like, your opportunities were far reduced. And, like, I don't consider that movie to be real much of anything, but I do think that it at least pointed out or brought attention to something that maybe not a lot of people were talking about, especially at the time. But, like, the idea that, like, when you get to a certain age, as a man especially, but I think it affects women as well, it just becomes harder to make friends. And like I said, you find yourself at this point in life where it's like, okay, the friends I have are the friends I'll have, and that's where I am in life now. But I think it's important to know that, like, modern breakthroughs of internet have definitely helped make that not so much of a thing. Like I said, I know I lean on Xbox quite a bit, but there's a lot of buddies of mine who will use, like, more traditional social media apps to find friends. And, like, I've never explored social media as a way to, like, make new friends, but it's a effective way to do it because they've maintained friendship for years after having met on some social media apps. So it's just interesting exploring that dichotomy and understanding how it's evolved over the years. But, like, I look at some other people in my life, and they quite literally don't have any friends. And I don't mean that in an insulting way, because I think they're perfectly happy with their life. They don't necessarily feel like they need them, perhaps. But, like, I can't imagine having lived a life in that way, if that makes sense. And, like, I even look at one of my brothers who is possibly more comparable to me, but I feel like when the rubber hits the road, he probably only has 2 friends. And he's had plenty more than that over his lifetime. But at the end of the day, now that he's in the stage of life that he's in now, he's got the 2. And as far as, like, friends of mine of which I know, like, in person and can hang out with in person whenever I want and just dial up and do the thing with them, I maybe have 3, I think. I think I have 3 friends now who are local and are in-person friends that I can dial up and do the thing with whenever. But then, like, you expand it to, like, my internet friends, and my friends group is healthier than it's ever been before. I've got, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got, like, 6 people that I hang out with at any given point in time. And that's a pretty healthy group of friends. Like, you compare it to the friends that you had when you were in high school, and most people, or I don't know, maybe not most people, but I feel like most people had, like, probably around 10 friends that they had back in those days. And naturally, those friendships are going to dwindle some. But going back to high school, I follow a lot of people from high school, and there was a definite, like, group or clique of people, and they weren't a clique in the toxic way. Like, they were cool people, but they weren't toxic people. But they hung out all the time, and I see that they still do stuff quite frequently together, despite being several states away from each other. Like, well, one of them lives in Texas, one of them lives in New York, and a good chunk of them still live here. and they totally, like, they get together and they go like golfing together, or they go hiking or whatever it is. And I was like, that is so cool that despite all the years, despite all of their lives being drastically different from each other, despite all the differences, they have managed to maintain a friendship. And like, hats off to them for being that close and being that awesome with each other. I can't believe that. Well, it's not that I can't believe, but I am a little bit envious of it, because I was that person who back in the day was like, oh, me and my friends, we're gonna be friends forever, we're never gonna be distant from each other or whatever. And then here we are, a couple of years down the road, and we're distant from each other. Actually, it was even less than that. Like, we graduated in 13, friends went off to college fall of 13, we hung out fall of 13, maybe summer of 14, and then we all found new friends, new lives, new, and we moved on. And it's honestly kind of sad to say that, but like I said, hats off to them for being able to remain friends through it all. I think that's really awesome. And like I said, somewhat makes me somewhat jealous, because I'm like, well, dang, I should have done what they did. And it's like, you never really know what people have going for them, what they don't have going for them, but it's just an interesting exploration. And there's thoughts and theories about the whole thing. I know there's a lot of people who feel like you should dump the friends that you carry from different stages of your life, because they keep you in that stage. And that's not something that I at all agree with. But he was like, if you only hang out with people that you knew from high school, then you're forever in high school, so to speak. And he's like, if you only hang out with people that you knew as a young adult in the working world, then you stay as a young adult in the working world. And if you only hang out with your old college buddies, then you just become a permanent college buddy. And I don't think that that's true, because people change, and the lives that they live change. And if the only thing that your friendship was just you being goofy college buddies, then more than likely, yeah, it will fall apart when I change to a new leaf in life. But there's a lot of people who change in the same vein or similar enough to keep things happening. So it's interesting for me to explore and to look at these things and to understand. Like I said, it's also fun that it was brought upon by a single conversation in a movie that had very little to do with friendship. It was about this guy who was engaged, and then he fell in love with this underage girl, and of course he did something with her, so then he had to break off his engagement. And then the underage girl was also apparently married, which was a bit of an odd twist. And all this stuff was going on, and the character's buddy, who was played by Ben Stiller, by the way, in a 1980s movie. I've never seen him in a movie quite that old. But at any rate, this friend's buddy was trying to warn him about all these crappy things that were happening, and he's like, dude. And then you finally get to like the crux of the movie, the big conflict, the bad part, not even the bad part, just the part where all the drama happens or whatever. And he's like, dude, he's like, it's hard to make friends at our age. And when you find someone that you like, when you find someone that you want to spend time with, you are willing to do crazy things for them. And that, in the entire movie, was the one thing that stood out to me. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate you listening to this conversation about adult male friendship. I think I need to lower this camera angle just a hair. Thank you for sticking to it. Y'all have a good day.